Leafs Lightning, a pivotal game two goes down tonight. We'll help tee up the game for you all and let you know everything you'll need to know for tonight's matchup. And the verdict is in on Michael Bunting. We'll tell you how many games he got and how it'll impact the series. All that more coming up on today's edition of Locked On Leafs. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the April 20th edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast. Shout out to all the 420 supporters. It's a national holiday for some of those out there, and hopefully your holiday is not invaded by a terrible performance by the Maple Leafs like we saw happen in Game 1, because tonight's a pivotal Game 2, and we're here to tee everything up for you because it's Locked On Leafs. We're your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, it's my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet. Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts from. We're also up on YouTube as well via video format. If you haven't checked us out there, please do subscribe to the channel and hit the little notification bell because we've got new videos coming out each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. With the playoffs here, man, it's go time. And we got tons of content coming out for you all. And, of course, there's a game tonight, Leafs and Lightning, Game 2, which to me feels like a Game 7, Dave. Like the nerves, I think, are even a little higher today than they were heading into Game 1. How do you feel about tonight's game?
Yeah, it's hard not to feel anxious about it because you know what's at stake. You know how Game 1 went and how many things need to start going right for this Leafs team to turn things around. So, yeah, if you're feeling anxious or a little concerned, I don't blame you. I'm sure there's confidence with some people, but there's probably still a lot of nerves to go around. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that in the arena tonight.
Yeah, and you say you're going to be down at the game tonight for Game 2?
Yep, I will be there. And I will just be sitting in my seat being like, yep, everything's good. Nothing going wrong. One of those people.
So if they're down 3 Cobb again after one period, will David Morassutti be part of the Boo Birds if that's happening again? Are you that guy? Are you that fan? Or are you a little more reserved and you just kind of sit there with anger and disgust and silence?
Yeah, I'll be a part of that. Probably that Sportsnet montage where they just took all the sad Leaf reaction throughout the game and just put it into that montage. Really love to see that. I know the people who put it together. I forgot to thank them personally for that one because that felt so good to watch.
Well, Dave, hopefully that's not the case this time. There's a lot more cheering and rowdiness going on because this is an important game for the Maple Leafs, so one that could legitimately be franchise altering. Like, not to, go a little bit overboard here, but like you lose tonight's game, you're down 2-0 in the series heading back to Tampa. That's bad news bears if you're the Maple Leafs, and we know how much is at stake in this series in particular. So we'll preview tonight's game in a little bit. I guess we'll kind of be doing it throughout the entire show today. It's kind of the crux of it. That's what's important today in Leafland. But we do got to get to this Michael Bunting news right off the bat. We do have the verdict on Michael Bunting and his hit on Erik Cernak, the blindside hit, the elbow in contact to the head play. He got 5-10 and a game misconduct in Game 1. And he also has been given an additional 3 games, Dave. 3 games Michael Bunting will be suspended for his hit to the head on Erik Cernak. My first instinct was that seemed a little excessive to me. Like I fully understood that was a bad hit and it was a suspendable play. 1 game, maybe 2. Maybe because he's Michael Bunting and we know there's a slight reputation, despite there being no prior history on this, I think, which is important to add.
Zilch.
3 games to me was quite excessive.
Yeah, look, I looked at the reasoning behind it. I know Chris Johnson tweeted out 1, illegal check to the head. We knew that was going to get him suspended.
Yes.
no, it's for a player who had no reason to anticipate, or pretty much a defenseless player, and the injury. I think they really are factoring the injury here because he is not playing in the next game, and I think that's why they went heavier on the suspension. But it still doesn't add up, in my opinion, because I was doing some searching around of what got a 3-game suspension for a hit to the head.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you, those ones were far worse than what I saw Michael Bunting do. Like,
Yeah.
so 2 games, I would have been like, you know what? Yeah, I said at least 1, maybe 2, and I didn't think more because playoff games mean that much more. And the NHL is like, no, we're gonna they literally threw the rule book at this guy. Like, they made sure of it. And it's just like, okay, so somebody who has his now, the best part is, if I mean, hopefully you don't have another hit like this, but if there is another hit like this, and the NHL better not give whatever person that is a lighter suspension, because they're gonna get criticized for it. And the funny thing is they've done this before. That's
Well,
that's the part about this. We have seen some suspensions get really hefty, like the Jason Spezza one, for all those years ago, and then we get like the ticky, like the ones that we think they're going to be worse, and then it's like, nah, it's just going to be a 1-gamer.
the Ryan Hartman one at the end of the season, I thought was one of the more brutal hits that we've seen, and like illegal hits that was very much not warranted. Like I didn't have the puck; it was away from the play. Like it was just a bad hit, and that only got one regular season game. So to see this one get three just speaks to how much of a head scratcher sometimes the Department of Player Safety is with their rulings. And I think ODog on Overdrive was kind of said it best. Like a third game almost feels like a Michael Bunting tax.
Mhm.
Just the way that this guy's been officiated, they had the opportunity to suspend him to the fullest extent that they felt they were allowed to, and they didn't you know they did it right. Like they did not ease up at all. That's the word I was looking for. They didn't ease
Yeah.
up on them. They levied down the largest suspension that they felt they were able to probably get away with, and 3 games ends up being the call. And so they're gonna have to go without their technically top line winger who's been alongside Matthews and Marner for the better part of 2 seasons, and he's not going to be available for the Maple Leafs for the next 3 games. I mean, how do you expect his presence in the lineup to impact things going forward?
Well, yeah, you're going to lose a guy who brings that edge to your team. That's something that the Leafs don't really have a lot of. Like, they have players that will do it, but Michael Bunting can also put the puck in the net on top of doing that. Now, he hasn't been doing that a lot lately, so I think in that regard, like, Michael Bunting wasn't exactly firing on all cylinders as he was last year. I know that the stats are similar, but it's the timing of everything, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
what, 4 goals since March. Like, at the same time, a lot of people they're upset that Michael Bunting's not playing, but they're at the same time they're just like, eh,
I Do you notice a split though in the fan base?
oh, 1,000%. Oh yeah,
Where so there is a segment out there that believes the Leafs are actually better off with Michael Bunting out of the lineup because now it's an opportunity to get Matthew Nyes in there. And some people are thinking like this might be Nazem Kadri all over again, where he takes a bad penalty, he gets suspended, and it's curtains. It might be bye bye for Michael Bunting. Might not find himself back into the lineup, and won't be brought back to the organization because they can't trust him. Like that is another additional conversation that is happening currently online. I want to get your thoughts on that viewpoint of this whole situation with Michael Bunting.
well, and the thing is like, all those people that maybe villainized Kadri all those years ago are the same people that just like, oh, why did the Leafs trade this guy? They now look at what
One,
happened, right? Like, I'm not one of those that's going to say now you can't have Michael Bunting on the team anymore. There's got to be a conversation had that, you know what, man, like, we allowed you to toe the line, we allowed you to play with that edge, and look what happened. You cost us, you cost us, not cost the game, but you put us in a difficult situation in game
it
one.
was, it was the nail in the coffin.
Yeah,
Like the game was pretty well over, but then when he took that penalty and they scored
yeah,
twice in that 5-minute major, that was the nail in the coffin.
yeah. So there's that, and there's also like, he knows the refs, his reputation, and yet he still continues. At some point, someone's got to send a message. I just don't. I'm not one of those people who's like, he can't be on the team, or just because of that. I think that's a little much. There aren't many players that can do what Michael Bunting does successfully and effectively. It's just he got this reputation. He saw what he was able to do and how he can disrupt the game, and he took it too far. Now you got to give him the chance to work his way back. It's not like he's constantly getting himself suspended, right? And the best part is, I know that now the Nazem Kadri comparison has been coming out, and we do have a bit of a response.
Well, so yeah,
Do you want to set this one up?
I'll set this one up because we all know what happened with Nazem Kadri here, right? Took the suspension, that cost the team a series, and then did the same thing the following season. It was 2 playoffs in a row against the Boston Bruins, where Nazem Kadri and those suspension really cost this team to the point where the fan base ran him out of town and said, you can't trust this guy, can't have him on the team, and Toronto traded him the following summer for Tyson Barrie and Alex Kerfoot. And we now know how poorly that trade has obviously has aged. With him going on to win a Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche, and Tyson Barrie walked the next year as UFA. They got nothing, and Alex Kerfoot's bottom 6 player, or top 6 now, I guess. We'll get to the lines in a little bit, but clearly neither of those two are Nazem Kadri. But it's funny because, it's a very similar situation, right? Where Michael Bunting, who's a guy who plays on the edge and has a similar reputation to what Kadri had, he found himself in that predicament too, where he was known as a bit of a diver, embellisher type of guy with the officials, and didn't get the benefit of the doubt for a while either. Like, he eventually basically had the same issue that Michael Bunting's having right now here in Toronto, and then he would go over the line in the playoffs, and he found himself out of this market because of the same type of stuff. And because of these parallels, I know that Overdrive was talking about it, and Brian Hayes was talking about it, and TSN posted a little clip. If you want to bring the tweet up, I think you have it. Nazem Kadri caught wind of it. He's not playing, so he's just kind of seeing what's going on as the Flames are out. And he said, y'all got to leave me out of this one, with a crying emoji. Come on, man. And it's to TSN Hockey tweeting out, quote, shades of Nazem Kadri, Brian Hayes on how the crushing Leafs start to the game, how much impact Michael Bunting's match penalty for his hit to the head on Eric Churanak, blah, blah, blah. And Kadri actually just responds to it, quote, tweets it. Y'all gotta leave me out of this one. That's all bunts, man. That has nothing to do with me. I did think it was kind of funny for him to chime in on that one, but it's really unfortunate, I think, is what we could say. I think 3 games is pretty excessive. A game or 2 would have made sense, but now missing that guy for 3, it does force the Maple Leafs to juggle the lines once again. And going into game 2, we'll see basically completely different forward configuration than we saw in game 1. Now, based on how they played in game 1, maybe this would have been coming anyways. I don't think Bunting would have been the guy who came out of the lineup, but it kind of makes that decision a lot easier for Sheldon Keefe this way. So why don't we take a quick break? We'll come back. We'll share what the lines look at practice ahead of game number 2 tonight. It's basically a must win, guys. Almost a must win. And we do have a starting goaltender. It was finally announced after being up in the air overnight yesterday. Sheldon Keefe came out and emphatically stated who his tendy is going to be in game 2. We'll tell you who that is on the other side. But first, Dave, how about a word from one of our oldest and best show sponsors? It's our good friends at Built Bar.
Yes, it is. Our good friends at Built Bar. And guess what? Something exciting is coming to Built.com on April 22nd. I don't have all the details yet, but the excitement is real, and it's something you don't want to miss. If you know how Built works, they have the most incredible protein bars in the world, and they do amazing, amazing flavors like, cookies and cream, churro, peanut butter brownie. And these unreal flavors do come in limited quantities. So mark your calendars and head to built.com, because on Saturday, April 22nd, be one of the first to discover what all the hype is about. I can't wait to see what the new flavor is. Make sure you use the promo code LOCKEDON15 to get 15% off your order at built.com. It is going to be a treat because guess what? Built bars are exactly that. They are a treat, and they are probably one of the best protein bars out there. So make sure you go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON15 to get 15% off your next order.
Welcome back to the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano. I've got Dave Morassutti with me. We're your hosts here at Locked On Leafs, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast. And if you are an everydayer, we appreciate you coming out and supporting us each and every day. If you're new to the podcast, hopefully you can become an everydayer. We're trying to grow this family, grow the community, one Leaf fan at a time. We've got a Discord channel, which is always popping off. You can check it down below. We've got the link in the podcast description, so you can check out and maybe join the Discord there and be part of that community as well. But thank you so much for everyone for giving us a shot and listening to this podcast. We got a big game tonight too that we got a preview for all y'all. And because of the Michael Bunting suspension, it really did force Sheldon Keefe to kind of take out the lineup blender, whether it was the suspension or the terrible play in game one. Either way, the blender was taken out in practice today, and we got some brand new forward lines to kind of look at and break down for you. So I don't know if you want to bring them up, Dave, and we can kind of go over them one by one and kind of, give our impressions of what Sheldon Keefe has kind of cooked up here heading into game two.
Yeah, it's quite interesting when you look at these lines because this is kind of what we thought the lines are going to be like in game one, which was having your centers 1 through 4, making sure you're running 4 lines deep in terms of how you're spreading out the lineup. So the big change, obviously, Yarncroke is going to be taking over for Bunting with Matthews and Marner. You have Kerfoot moving up into the left wing spot with Tavares and Nylander, so reuniting that second line that we saw for most of the season. Then you have Matthew Knies getting into the lineup. He's going to play with Ryan O'Reilly and Olachari, which we hadn't seen yet. And he did play with Achari, but it was with O'Reilly, but it was with Nylander on the right. So Achari's a little bit new there. You have Zach Aston-Reese, David Kampf, and Lafferty. That remains the same. So basically, small changes, like guys kind of moving around a little bit and Nice coming in. But this is kind of what we thought the lineup was going to be like in game one, just because we thought the Leafs would want to have 4 lines deep and 4 lines that are capable of having some offense on top of it as well.
Yeah, 3 at the very least, with Matthews, Tavares, and O'Reilly being spread out down the middle. I still probably would prefer if Sheldon Keefe were to flip Kerfoot and Nyes, only because I still look at that third line and still deep down want it to be looked as more of a checking line. And I'm not sure you're deploying Matthew Nyes as a checking line forward against the top line of Kucherov, Point, and Stamkos in his first ever playoff game. I think that would be way too much of a responsibility. And if you're not sending out O'Reilly to do that, like, who are you sending out to do that as a forward group? Like, you're not going to send out your fourth line, and I don't want Nylander to have to shut those guys down either. Like, I guess maybe you're going to try and match them up with your top line with Matthews, Marner, and Yarncroc. But I thought the point of having O'Reilly on a third line was to allow Matthews to cook and free him up a little bit. Like, it really does confuse me a little bit, this lineup configuration. It shouldn't, just because we know how much Sheldon Keefe trusts Alex Kerfoot, and typically his first instinct is to put Kerfoot up in a top 6 role, because he's done that so often. Anytime something's going wrong and they need to put someone in the top 6, he's usually the guy who ends up winning that job or is awarded that opportunity. And I mean, Kerfoot has in the past stepped up in the playoffs, I understand, but I don't know. For me, I just thought that he would be best served as more of a defensive guy with O'Reilly and Achari. And, that's your defensive unit. Like, you just kind of send those guys out as your checking line. And then Nyes, I think, could cook up some offense with Tavares and Willie Nylander. And that's basically, I think would be your forward lines essentially. But Sheldon Keefe obviously thinks otherwise, and these are the lines he's going with. I did believe that Matthews, Marner, and Yarncroc did start to show a little something at the end of the first game there in the third period. They did score a really nice tic-tac-toe kind of goal, so hopefully they can bring some of that some of that effort into game two very early on.
Yeah, I think the important thing here for Yarncroke is Matthews and Martin are going to get all the attention. Like Bunting had chances in that game against Tampa where he was kind of left on a little bit of an island, but he couldn't really do anything with it. I'm hoping that now that it's Cali Yarncroke, he's going to be able to take advantage of, maybe some of the softer coverage that's going to come his way in this game, as what happened on that goal. He was not accounted for because all the Tampa players went towards Matthews and Marner. And I get what you mean with Kerfoot, because I just think this is because Sheldon Keefe wants someone with a little bit more of a defensive mindset to be with Nylander and Tavares. And that's why Kerfoot is there. And that's why Kerfoot is always there. But at the same time, I'm just hoping Kerfoot can bring something offensively. It's asking for, I know, the moon and back like a lot, but you kind of hope that he can get back to what he did in the playoffs not too long ago. Like there was a time where he was actually performing quite well in the playoffs too. So it's going to be a lot to ask Matthew Nyes if he's going to have to go up against, like, I'm just wondering how they're going to match this up. Like, are you going to put O'Reilly up against Cirelli? I guess that's the line you're going to go with. Or are you going to put him up against Braden Point?
I would have put him against Braden Point. That was my
Yeah.
initial thought. Like, he's probably your best defensive center out of the three. Like, he's a Conn Smythe winner, and Achari's a heavy guy who can, shut down offense. That was my original assumption. But if you also have Matthew Nyes on that line, now it makes me weary a little bit about putting him out there with, Kucherov and Stamkos and Point.
No, that's so true. And like, I don't remember too much about who they went up, like who that line went up against when they were in Tampa. Like Matthew Nyes didn't look out of place, but this is the playoffs. This is totally different. The mindset is totally different when it comes to what you're supposed to do out there. So you just got to hope that, I mean, it's a good thing that he's with O'Reilly and Chari, two guys who are very, who know what they have to do. And that's the benefit of putting Nyes with those two, I guess. And that's what Sheldon Keefe wants. He wants someone that in that regard, but I would have loved to see Nyes in the top six. I just think I have more faith that he can do things offensively over Kerfoot.
Yeah, and ultimately, like I didn't really plan or intend on bearing the lead here, but I kind of did. None of it really matters though tonight if 34 and 16 aren't the best players on the ice.
Yeah.
Like tonight, Matthews and Marner, and look, last night the antics to try and get Matthews away from the Cirelli matchup, I think was it was a little overboard. He was being way too reactive. Matthews played like 17 minutes of ice time last night. I know there's a lot of penalties and he's not on the PK, but that means you try and find him those extra minutes at 5-on-5 play. Like that guy's got to play minimum 20 minutes a game. Minimum. You need to have that guy out there on the ice. But when you're scared to put him out there because you don't want Cirelli to be out there to shut him down, so you're kind of, line matching, you're doing the chess match, you're kind of hurting his rhythm and flow. And that probably did, result in the weird game that those two had. I think they just need to bite the bullet here. And if just so happens Cirelli ends up out there matching up against Matthews and Marner, Austin Matthews is a better player than Anthony Cirelli. Like he's a great player. Don't get me wrong. He's a terrific shutdown two-way centerman. But Matthews is a better player. He still should be trusted by Sheldon Keefe to win those minutes. Like I don't really understand why. I mean, I get it because last year he did shut him down, specifically when they were in Tampa Bay. But like Matthews, this is the year that he was supposed to elevate. I don't care who the hell he's playing against, who the hell his other opponent is at center that's on him, his matchup. That dude's got to go out there, perform, and he's got to be the better player, the best player on the ice. And ultimately, that's what it's going to take for the Leafs to win game 2 tonight is those two guys in particular, Matthews and Marner, no matter who the hell they're playing, whether, if Hedman's healthy, which we'll get to in a moment, they got to be better than Hedman. They got to be better than Sergachev. They got to be better than Cirelli. They got to be better than Brandon Hagel. They got to be better than all those guys, Nick Paul, whatever. And obviously better than Kucherov, Point, Stammer. They're big boys offensively, because if they don't show up again, you saw what happened. There's a ripple effect, and there's not really much offense coming from your bottom six. Those two have to try and get it done. Not on the power play. On the power play, I mean, they did have a couple of power play goals, and they finally scored in the third. But at 5-on-5, when the game is played, at its most, where it's really won and lost sometimes, that's where those two have to be as dominant have they shown that they can be, and they got to do it tonight.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of paying two guys a combined $22 million and you have to shelter them at all or try to get look, if you want to get the favorable matchup, early in the game, the maroon line was out with Matthews and Marner on the ice. And what does Sheldon Keefe do? Nah, I got to get them. I got to switch that up. Like, play those matchups. Like, what are we doing here? Matthews, like the top two lines should have been out there a lot more than they were in the first 10 minutes of that game because it was the other guys that were fumbling the puck and leading to goals, right? And so you got to get your big boys going. Martin's been playing well over 20, like 23, 24 minutes quite a bit this season.
Mm-hmm.
Matthews at times was playing that as well.
Yeah.
Unless there's an injury that we're not hearing about, there's no reason why they should not be playing. Matthews should be playing upwards of 20 minutes. Even Nylander should be playing more at this point. You need
Yeah.
to score goals. You need to win hockey games.
Right. Again, though, the amount of
The penalties, yes.
penalties that they took, like that's the biggest culprit to why their ice time was
Right.
down, because they don't kill off any penalties. So the whole 5 minutes that Michael Bunting had the major, those two were stapled to the bench. It's just not part of their game. And you would think at the end of the second period, Matthews would have got a couple of those shifts probably if it was 5-on-5 hockey.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Like, just don't take all those penalties. 8 penalties is too much to take. That's just simple knowledge, dude. Can't take 8 penalties against the Tampa Bay Lightning, which was the third-ranked power play in the NHL this year. They're a top-tier power play. Do not take penalties. You got to be disciplined.
And at
if
least
you're gonna win this
Kelly
game.
is not good enough where you can take 8 penalties and be okay and get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, they're like middle of the pack. I think like 12th or 13th or something this year. So like not even top 10. So yeah, that's it, man. You got to make sure that you stay disciplined. You got to make sure that those big boys are going. And we do have a goaltender who also I think is going to be in the limelight tonight. He's going to have to step up big time. We'll tell you who that is on the other side. But first, let me tell you about one of today's show sponsors, and it is eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Well, same with your vehicle. So parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay, guaranteed fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. Game 2 tonight, or as I like to call it, Game 7 tonight for the Maple Leafs. It's not literally do or die, but it's a pretty much must-win scenario for the Maple Leafs. And after 12 hours of speculation as to who was going to play in net for Toronto, neither of us really thought that Joseph Woll was actually going to get the start. But when Sheldon Keefe was asked specifically who his goalie was going to be in Game 2, he did not definitively give an answer and say Samsonov. He said too early to tell. It opened up the door for a little bit of speculation. Well, Sheldon Keefe closed that door today and said, Sammy's our guy. He will be in net. He's someone who's done a really good job when bouncing back off of losing performances. And I decided to fact check him on that, Dave. Pretty solid record out of Ilya Samsonov after a loss this season. 13-1-2 after losing a game this year. Not too shabby.
It's not too bad. And you're going to need that from Ilya Samsonov because Andrei Vasilevsky wasn't great. He wasn't magnificent, but he made the saves he needed to when the pressure was on. The Leafs were trying to get back into the game. But yeah, no, Samsonov, especially early on, I think that's going to be the crucial part. That first 10 minutes of the game, can he help the Leafs if there's some nervous moments? Because there are too many nervous moments, and he was a part of it, right? Like you look at some of the goals he let in. Yeah, they weren't all his fault because his team gave up the puck, but he also he wasn't holding pucks. He was allowing juicy rebounds. He was allowing those second chance opportunities.
Yep.
And I think what the Leafs need to do is they can't let Tampa get to that front of the net, right? Like Samsonov is so good at those chances in front in the slot, but you can't give them away for free either.
No, I mean it was an uncharacteristic game. That's how Keefe put it yesterday. It was very uncharacteristic how poorly they defended in front of the goal. I think it was uncharacteristic for how poor Ilya Samsonov play was in those situations too. Like you noted it, he has the number one shooting save percentage in the NHL when it comes to high danger and inner slot save percentage. So he's typically really good with that, and he can track the puck well when it's in tight. But last night, just an uncharacteristic night. Was not able to find pucks. Was not able to, corral those saves and get that second, third stop. Tampa was finding a way to get pucks into the back of the net, and a lot of those goals coming from within, 10 feet of the goal mouth. And that's exactly how goals are scored in the playoffs, and that's why it matters. That's why size matters. That's why it matters to go out and get yourself a Jake McCabe, to go out there. Due to are going to box out players and have a heavier stick than the opposition, so they can tie him up, so they can't get that puck off. But Justin Hall wasn't tying up sticks last night, and a lot of times he wasn't boxing players out. And what happened? Well, a lot of goals ended up in the back of the net, 6 to be exact, with him on the ice. Were you surprised that he is getting another opportunity to play tonight? Did you
No.
kind of expect to see Liljegren get into the lineup over Hall today, or you thought, yeah, it makes sense for him to get back out there and just kind of take last night's game as just a bad one, throw the tape in the garbage, and be better in game 2?
Well, and the fact that Sheldon Keefe also had a conversation with them as well. Like, it's good that Sheldon Keefe is making sure his prized possession is, all there. Because, I don't know how many, like, if honestly, if Timothy Liljegren was on the other side, there's no way he's getting into the lineup for the next game. So
You're
am
right.
I surprised that Justin Hall is back in? No, I'm not surprised, because Sheldon Keefe trusts Justin Hall a lot more than he trusts a lot of players on this team, apparently. But like, if he comes out and he does the same exact thing as he did in game 1, and I'm not even talking about the goals, like being on the ice for all those goals against, but when you have a chance to hit someone from behind the net and you don't deliver the hit and that ends up leading to a goal, things like that, I don't know how like, there has to be like no leash at that point.
Yeah.
Like, you have Sheldon Keefe, like your job's not secured, right? This team doesn't have the luxury to say we're going to give these guys second, third chances when they're not performing. You have 9 defensemen that you can choose from. 9. So the message should be sent that you're not cutting it. We got 3 other guys waiting to take your spot in the lineup. That should be the message right now. But unfortunately, when you bring those guys back out, I don't know if it sends the right message. It makes it seem like things are okay. I understand you don't want to do mass panic. You don't want to make the story all of a sudden Justin Hall,
Yeah.
it's all his fault.
Well, I do wonder too, though, just to play devil's advocate a little bit,
Sure.
like everyone played bad last night.
Yes. And I think
So
that's why you didn't see massive changes, because it would be like, oh, it was Justin Hall's fault. We don't really have to take all the blame here.
no, he was on the ice for
He
6
was
goals.
on the and I'm not making excuses here. I'm the last person to make excuses for Justin Hall. I wanted that man thrown out to the moon after watching him in game 1.
Yeah, I know.
It's gonna be sad when I have to watch him for game 2. Thank God we didn't pay for the tickets, because I was not gonna be paying to watch Justin Hall in a playoff game. But I just think he's got to understand that he's got to like that game he had against Edmonton when they made the trade for Luke Shen, right? And those trades were being made, or I think that I don't think the Shen trade happened just yet, but it was like
It
around that
did, but
time.
he didn't get into the lineup, I think, until
When
'cause he
he
didn't have a break
realized
or something.
when he was like the light bulb went off, said, "Holy crap! I actually now have to play with some urgency," and he did. Obviously, the Leafs lost the game, but we saw some of the things we hadn't seen. Remember that
If I recall that game, though, he was brutal,
he was
but
terrible, but he had
but
a fight.
had a bite to his game. He
Yes.
he he was late a couple hits. Remember he had that hit on McDavid.
Yeah.
And
He fought and lost the fight to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, I
right,
think,
because he
yeah.
also had a hit on Yamamoto. So it was the
Yes.
hit on Yamamoto that made Nuge want to fight him, and then he got popped in the mouth by Nuge, and that was rather embarrassing.
Yes.
But yeah, like that is what he does have to do. He's got to play with an edge. Last night, nobody played with an edge. Like that was one
Mm.
of the criticisms that we had in yesterday's show. Our everydayers will know that. They listened yesterday, but that's what I cannot see tonight is that them shying away from contact. I saw that so much last night. Like that Perry goal was him shying away from contact. He just didn't want to lay the hit that was right there in front of him. Outside of Jake McCabe, Nolachari had a couple of hits. I really cannot think of anyone else who really made an impact physically in that game last night or the other night in game one. That can't be the case tonight. They're gonna have to come out and Justin Hall is gonna have to lay a hit. He's going to have to box dudes out. He's going to have to tie up sticks and be the bigger, stronger player, especially in front of the net. Have to defend in front of the net because this is a team that will bury you. 25% of the goals that the Tampa Bay Lightning scored last year en route to a third straight Stanley Cup final, 25% of their goals came off of rebounds. That's how they score, Dave. That is how they score. In front of the net, in tight, they bang at garbage rebound goals, loose pucks. And if you don't tie them up, they know how to put it in the back of the net. You got to do it. Justin Hall has to do it. Gio has to do it.
Yeah, it's
Riley,
as a pair.
Shen, Brody, McCabe.
They'll have
Can't just bleep on poop on that guy. No one did it last night.
Mhm.
Everyone's got to come in and do it for game 2. Or guess what? They're going to be down 2-0 going to Tampa, and the series basically pack it in. It's over. The physicality and intensity must ramp up for the Maple Leafs, and it's got to start at puck drop. Puck drop. That's when everything has to start to come together for Toronto.
And I'm also going to add that the forwards are going to have to help out at this point too. Like the defense can't be the only ones. The forwards are going to have to, aid in the defensive part of the game a bit more. And yeah, everyone has to be better. Like there's not really, you can't really, like I understand people are saying, McCabe and Brody weren't as bad because McCabe played with a bit of an edge, but they were still on the ice for goals against, right? They still looked pretty not great. And so I think that's got to be the message. Everybody has to step up. And then if things don't go right or if a player doesn't play right, next man up. I think that's you get to the point where you can't just leave it to chance that these guys are going to be able to, turn things around on their own. You have the coach eventually has to be a coach and decide I got to make moves here before I lose things.
Yeah, you're not wrong, and I'll wrap with this and say that it also means like the forwards need to help with that support as well. Really quickly before we do jet, there are some injury updates from the other side of the ice. Yzerman will not play. He's the one who took the hit from Jake McCabe, so he was ruled out. Eric Chernak, who took the hit from Michael Bunting, he was ruled out. Victor Hedman, who did not play in the second and third period, he will be a game time decision. There's a possibility he could play, but has not been ruled out quite yet. That will be a massively impactful move if he does not play. Toronto needs to take advantage in this game if he is not going to play. That is imperative. And lo and behold, Tanner Jeannot, a game time decision.
Oh, he's still playing.
Possibility to play tomorrow.
Oh, he's so playing.
Or tonight, I guess, according to Coach John Cooper. Yeah, probably.
He's playing, especially now that they have the injuries on the blue line. They don't have the luxury to really.
Yzerman, Yzerman was literally playing his role, and now he's gone. So they need somebody in the back end there who's got that type of size, bulkness, and toughness. And Toronto's got to be ready for that because he's going to shoot out like a cannon, I think, if he does get into this game. So
somebody even asked me if Jeannot gets in, do they put in Wayne Simmons? And I'm like, you know what? You can't do it at this point. Unless Jeannot, for some reason in game 2, is giving you problems and I feel like in game 3 you need to get Simmons in there. but you got to win. You got to win. You can't be worried about sending messages.
Are you gonna tell me that you went out, you acquired Jake McCabe, you acquired Luke Shen, you acquired Noel Achari? None of those three.
Oh, Luke Shen is going to be the one to do it for sure.
Like, that's what I mean. Like, you don't need to put in a guy who
Exactly. That's what I
can't
also
really
told him.
play anymore. Like, couldn't play last year in the playoffs. It was very evident. You're gonna toss him out there now for what? To go out and play 3 minutes and get into a fight? No, that's a waste of a roster spot.
I know. It's just funny that like you're so fixated on that one player when you have a whole Tampa Bay Lightning team you need to worry about. Like,
Mhm.
and people are just like, oh no, Victor Hedman lap. I'm like, yeah, but Victor Hedman didn't play 2 periods, and the Leafs did nothing about it.
Yeah. Hey,
Like,
man, that Perbix kid, he's pretty good, man.
yeah, the comment section, there were some people saying we weren't giving that kid credit. Look,
Dude,
you know what?
Perbix, according to the comment section, our last video, the Perbix,
He was Bobby Orr last
dude,
night.
right? Next Nick Lidstrom, apparently. Nick Perbix. So we got to give him that love, or else, those Tampa people are getting after us in the comment section. It was crazy. Crazy. It's like, sure, he was good. It was one game. Relax, though. He's not the second coming of Nick Lidstrom. Yet, at least. But perhaps, maybe one day. Who knows? Lidstrom was what, like a 7th round pick? Who knows? Maybe Nick Perbix can be that. All right, buddy. Well, I'll be down at the game. You'll be down at the game. Let's hope we can have a much better recap show tomorrow. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Go ahead, leave a like on this video. Comment down below your thoughts. Does Toronto get back on the horse, and do they respond in game number 2? Who plays hero for the Maple Leafs tonight? Let us know in the comment section down below. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll recap game 2 for you. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.